Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another rules breakdown. And this time I'm going to be looking at this, Dogs in the Vineyard, which came out from Lumpley Games in 2004. Now, the usual format of my rules breakdowns don't exactly match the way the rules in Dogs in the Vineyard work, but it's close enough, so I'm going to stick with the regular format, although this is going to lead to a little jumping around in the rules. Now, there aren't any sample NPCs in the rulebook, so I did some digging around online and I found this, which somebody nicely uploaded, Brother Thaddeus and his stats and his traits. Although he doesn't have his item, but we'll cover that as we go through, it's good enough to use as an example. And because of the way the rules work, I've got 2 dice rollers down below. But anyway, let's start having a look at the rules of Dogs in the Vineyard. And skill rolls. Well, these are dealt with on page 33 of the rulebook, and it's a long section, but it's conflict and resolution. That's because everything you do when you roll dice is considered a conflict, whether it's an argument, whether it's a chase, whether it's a fist fight, whether it's a gunfight. You only roll dice when you're having conflict. You don't roll dice if you're doing something simple. So you'll never roll dice for riding a horse or climbing a wall or whatever, unless you're in conflict to do that against somebody else. Obviously, sneaking and things like that will be conflicts as well. Now, the way this works is you roll 2 of your stats, and the Games Master will decide, but they tend to fall into groups like Acuity and Heart is used for arguing. Acuity and Body will be used for fighting. Acuity and Willpower is used for gunfighting, for aiming weapons. So you're choosing 2 of the attributes, depending on what you're doing. You then get to choose one of your traits if it's valid. Now, we're saying this is an argument, so this character's argumentative, so they get to add a 1d10 as well. Then you get to add 1 relationship if it's valid. So all your blood relatives, your brothers, sisters, father, mother, etc., you all get 1d6 extra. And you've got other people you've got relationships with. This one has Sister Hannah, who has 2d6. But we'll say he's arguing with his brother. There's also another element which isn't on this tiny little character sheet, which is equipment. You will have certain items like a custom Bowie knife, for example, which would give you an extra dice in melee combat if you were using it. But that's not on this character sheet, so we'll say this character's lost whatever items they had, or they're just not valid. So, at the moment, we have his acuity plus his hearts, 8d6, plus his blood relationship for arguing with his brother, so 9d6, and his argumentative for 1d10. So, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and a d10. 8, and a d10. This one doesn't seem to have come up. Throw again. There we go. We've got our dice totals. So the person that initiated the combat now allocates 2 of his dice to his first start of the conflict. So he is delivering his opening line in the argument, and he allocates out, let's say, his 6 and his 4. Then it's up to the other player, the person he's in conflict with, to deliver a counter-argument or whatever action they're doing, and will allocate 2 of his dice as well. Now, he can match them, which means he just counters the argument, keeping it going, or he might want to raise on it, which means he delivers a particularly good point and takes control of the argument, which means the other player then has to match it or raise himself. And you work through your dice like that. However, in any time you are countering somebody's argument, if you match it in 1 dice, then that dice you can keep and use again the next time. If you need to use 3 or more dice to counter them or to raise on them, then you take a wound in the combat, and we'll come to that later. But that's how it works. You go through your dice, allocating them out until the conflict comes to an end because somebody has run out of dice and can raise no longer, or can match no longer. Now, Dogs in the Vineyard doesn't really have any initiative system, because of the way, as I described with the skill rolls, you are both kind of going at the same time in a back and forth. So nobody's really going first, it's just whoever initiates the conflict, whether they start the argument, whether they pull their gun, whatever. They will be going first, and the other people will be dealing against that. If there are more than 2 people involved, then you just continue round with everybody matching or raising, as you would in a game of cards. You keep working your way round as everybody raises, matches, and spends their dice until people are out. Now, as we described there, an argument, but there's an extra level to it. If we go back to the rules and we go to page 37, we've got escalating. So we've got 2 people having an argument, and one of them decides that they're not making the winning argument at all, and they decide to take it a step further. They decide to swing at the opponent. They decide to pull a gun or whatever. They escalate the combat. Now what happens is you roll a fresh set of dice based on what's happening, and you keep whatever dice you haven't spent already. So you're getting a larger dice pool to keep the conflict going and achieve what's called fallout, what I called wounds last time, from needing to use more dice to counter what they've done. So in this case, Brother Thaddeus, he pulls a gun on his brother. We're going to be using acuity plus willpower, so 8d6. He's a good shot, so 1d10 again, and it's his brother, so another 1d6. So again, 9d6 plus a d10, he'll be rolling, but adding it to whatever dice he's already not spent, and continuing the conflict that way. And I suppose you could do this twice. If you were having an argument, you could escalate it into fisticuffs, and then you could escalate it into a gunfight even further than that. So you could take it a step further, adding more and more dice and keeping the conflict and the amount of wounds that you're receiving greater and greater. Damage is measured in fallout. Now these are dice that are allocated from the ones you had to roll over 3, or had to use over 3 against somebody else. So somebody raised against you. To match that, you had to use 3 dice. It's only counted if it's over 2. So if you use 3 dice, you will take 3 dice of fallout. And if you had to use 4 dice, 5 dice, 6 dice, you would be getting 4, 5, 6 dice of fallout. What type of dice is based on what you were doing at the time. So if we go back to the rulebook and back to page 36, we can see fallout dice you take depends on the nature of the blow. D4s if it's not physical, D6s if it's physical but not a hit with a weapon, D8s if it's a hit with a weapon but not a bullet, and D10s if it's a bullet. So guns do the most, knives, swords, etc. do D8s, fists will do D6s, but words do D4s. You can actually injure people with your words. And you don't roll these at the time you receive them. You allocate these all and deal with them at the end of the conflict. So you don't fall down during combat having taken too much damage. You just run out of dice and the conflict ends, and then you'll be rolling to see what happens. So your conflict has ended and you've got a bunch of fallout dice. Now, you roll those according to the section on page 39. Roll all your fallout dice. If you took more than 1 blow, you might have fallout in different sizes. That's just fine. Roll them all and add the 2 highest together. That's your fallout sum. So no matter what dice you roll, you're only counting the 2 highest. You total them up. Is your fallout sum less than 8? If so, your character suffers only short-term consequences. Choose one of these things. Subtract 1 from your character's stats for the next conflict. Take a new trait rated 1d4 for the next conflict. Change the dice of one of your character's relationships to d4s for your next conflict. Have your character leave the scene and spend some time alone. Only choose this one if nobody else launches a follow-up conflict. So if they've got a chance, they can go and spend some time to recover. Otherwise, they've got disadvantage on the next conflict by choosing one of those options. If your fallout sum's 8 or higher, then you subtract 1 from one of your character's stats, or take a new trait at 1d4, take a new relationship at 1d4, add 1d to an existing d4 trait or relationship, subtract 1d from an existing d6 trait or relationship, change the die size of an existing trait or relationship to d4, erase a belonging for your character sheet, change the description of your coat to include bad damage, reduce your coat's dice as appropriate. So you've taken further effects. These are sort of more permanent ones. But if your fallout sum is 12 or higher, your character's injured. Your fallout sum less than 16, if so, roll dice equal to your character's body. If you can see your current fallout sum in 3 or fewer dice, so you can get the 12 or higher on 3 of your body dice, your character will recover without medical attention. Stop here. Otherwise, bump your current fallout sum up to 16 and continue. Is your fallout sum 16 or higher? Your character is badly injured. With medical attention he might live, but without it he won't. If your character gets medical attention, launch a new conflict. You'll roll your character's body, plus the healer's acuity, plus any relevant relationships, traits and tools, of course. If your healer is a fellow player character, have that player roll the dice. I roll all your fallout dice, again, plus the demonic influence, about which more later. What's at stake is whether your character will live. Your healer takes any fallout from this roll. If you and your healer win, your character will live. Stop here. Otherwise, bump your current fallout sum up to 20 and continue. If you don't get medical attention, bump your current fallout sum up to 20 and continue. Is your fallout sum 20 or higher? If so, your character's dead. Choose one of the following. Die now. Set up your death scene, during which you'll die. You'll notice that since only guns inflict 1d10 fallout, only a gunfight can kill your character outright, and then only if you roll 2 10s on your fallout dice. Otherwise, your character will have at least the opportunity to survive with medical care. Notice also that since talking inflicts only d4 damage, only if you roll 2 4s will an argument give your character long-term consequences. So that's how damage works. You're rolling the fallout from the conflict, and based on what you roll on those dice, you get various effects, right up to the possibility of dying, although it's impossible to escalate a verbal argument up to death. You can take permanent effects from it, but you can't actually die from an argument. Now, advancement actually comes in 2 ways, and one of them involves the fallout dice. So, on page 40, while your fallout dice are still there on the table, check to see, did you roll any 1s? If so, your character gets something good out of the conflict. Choose one of these things. Add 1 to one of your stats. Create a new trait at 1d6. Add or subtract 1 die from an existing trait. So you've got it at 1d6, you can now have it at 2d6. Change the d size of an existing trait. So if you've got d6, you can increase it to a d8. Create a new relationship 1d6. Add or subtract 1 die from an existing relationship. Change the d size of an existing relationship. Write a new belonging in your character sheet and give it its usual dice. This is the experience list. Choose only 1 per conflict, no matter how many 1s you rolled in Fallout. So, at the end of a conflict, you can actually improve by learning from that. But also, if we flick on to page 79, between towns. So your characters have finished the adventure and they're moving on. They're travelling to the next town. And during this time, they reflect on things. Did your characters do a good thing? Is the town better than when they arrived? What did the events in the town reveal about your characters? Whose character do you like better than you did before? Whose don't you like as well as you used to? What are you saying about people in the actions of your characters? Playing dogs will raise questions about duty, obedience, responsibility, sin, and love. Where do your characters come down on the issues? And while they're doing that, they get to choose one of the following. Add 1 to their stats, add a new trait at 1d6, add or subtract 1 die from an existing trait, change the d size of an existing trait, create a new relationship 1d6, add or subtract 1 die from an existing relationship, change the d size, write a belonging in your character sheet and give it. This is exactly the same as the experience fallouts. Don't let that throw you. In addition, you choose one of the following. Add any 2 dice to your unassigned relationship dice. Add 2d4 plus any 1 die to your unassigned relationship dice. Rewrite the description of your coat to reflect damage, wear, repairs, or replacement. Choose again from the reflection experience fallout list, so the list above, where you can add a stat or whatever. So you get some benefit from it, and you change your character slightly, or you can just get a benefit from that as well. You get to choose. So that is Dogs in the Vineyard. Now there's some interesting rules in there. Part of the skills section seems like the GM should be able to have a default. And I did find mention repeatedly of rolling 1d6 plus 1d10. Now it generally says that's just an example, but that might be a default amount, so you can challenge your characters when they're not going up against a person. If they fall in a river and they're having to swim their way out, they'll be going up against a challenger who's just rolling 2 dice, so they're trying to beat that. But I can't find that detailed out. That's just my assumption that the Games Master's allowed to do that. But Games Master's allowed to do whatever they want. I really quite like the rules in this. The experience rules are fantastic, as are the damage system. The way you can get benefits from a conflict, as well as taking permanent effects from it, is really brilliant, because your character will develop. You know, they'll pick up scars and wounds and benefits and be a completely different character after just a couple of adventures from all the conflicts they've been through, and then their downtime between towns. But anyway, I think I've been waffling on for quite long as usual, so thank you very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.